Hi, my name is Nora, and today I'm going to talk to you about my personal literacy history. Um, Before I go describing the events in my life that have shaped me as a reader and a writer, I'm going to read you a comment from my report card in first grade for language arts. I got my mom to pull it out and email me the comment. The reason why I'm starting with this is I think it sums up who I am as a reader and a writer now, even, which is kind of freaky because that was so long ago. But I want you to listen to this, and here it goes. Nora often chooses to read for pleasure. Not much has changed. She reads known books fluently. Nora is learning and using new strategies to read unfamiliar words. She listens and responds to stories, often recounting personal experiences. In her writing, Nora forms complete sentences. She is beginning to use the punctuation rules she has learned more consistently. When reminded to, she will edit her writing. Nora speaks clearly and distinctly and expresses her ideas in a coherent sequence. So that was my grade one language arts. And in grade one, I remember my teacher gave us a descriptive writing assignment. And she said, describe a food you had last night. And I had had popcorn. I don't know how I remember this, but I did. Um, so I remember that I used the word sizzling. I said the popcorn was sizzling as it came out of the microwave. It was hot, it was buttery. The point is, my teacher got so obsessed with the word sizzling. Like when she looked down at my paper, she stopped the whole class and said, this is the kind of language I want you guys to use. And as a first grader, I was like, popcorn sizzles. What's the big deal? But as an adult, seeing a first grader, use and spell that word correctly, yeah, it's a bit of a big deal. Uh, I guess that event showed me how much I really love language and how much reading really stimulates the imagination, especially for children. Moving on. So, when I was a bit older, so let's say uh, 11, 12, 13, so at the end of my elementary school years, uh, well, let's make a general statement about elementary school. I never really had many friends. I went to school with very horrible people, to be honest, and very unsupportive teachers that really didn't care about you unless you were one of their favorites. And I know I'm not just saying that, I know people who can back me up. But I've never really, just generally, been somebody who people naturally gravitate towards. I've always been maybe a little awkward or closed, and that's fine. It's just the way I am. Um, but my elementary school experience was a very sad time in my life, and so I remember reading a book called The Skin I'm In by Sharon G. Flake. And this book was a huge event in my personal literacy history because it turned me on to writing. This book was pretty much about a girl, very, very bare bones plot, by the way. It's just about a girl who got really bullied in her school. It was a girl who is actually quite beautiful. From the description, she was quite beautiful, but everybody really made fun of her because she was unpopular and just completely unaccepted. And that really rang true with my position in elementary school. This girl would be getting teased. Her name was Malika. This girl would be getting teased because of her skin color, and I know that I was teased for things like the way I look too. My skin color being one of them, but more just really horrible negative comments about my general appearance. I don't know whether or not I should edit this out, but I'm just I'm just talking. I'm just letting it flow at the moment. Verbal diarrhea. But anyways, this book by Sharon G. Flake, The Skin I'm In, really turned me on to writing because it showed how writing is a very powerful tool. it tells you that you don't have to speak to be heard. You can write to be heard as well. And this girl was so unpopular in this book that she had no voice. That was exactly my position. Nobody would listen to her. In her normal school dynamic anyway, nobody would listen to her. And so she began to write, and she found that it was, at first she was like, oh my God, this is so lame. But then it turned out to be one of her passions. And I just remember she's what definitely turned me on to writing. And I actually, over Twitter, got into contact with Sharon G. Flake, and I told her that, and I thanked her. And as an author, I can imagine she was very happy, and she told me to keep writing and everything, and it was really lovely. But that was a huge thing. The Outsiders too. At that age, I loved reading that book. I could read it again and again and again. I also loved Harry Potter, but if I start talking about that, it'll turn into a full-fledged ramble, and we shouldn't. So then high school rolled around. Two events, maybe three, that happened in high school. First event is that I was accidentally registered for an advanced placement course in English. I signed up for just the normal, average English class. Your teachers from elementary school, had to sign you in to an advanced placement class because they technically were the ones who knew your level, but my teachers just had no confidence in me at all. I pretty much barely existed to them. So I didn't get that, but for some reason, this was so good, but the high school accidentally registered me in the advanced placement class. And I remember realizing this like seconds before the bell, and like running into my classroom, into my English classroom. Apparently, just according to my English teacher, just flailing and shouting, "I'm not supposed to be here," which is kind of hilarious because she refers to it as Kramer from Seinfeld. She said, "You slid in like Seinfeld and started flailing and screaming." And I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I did walk into the classroom very flustered and said, "I'm not supposed to be here, and I don't know what to do," because they made enriched advanced placement classes sound very intimidating in elementary school, and I was constantly told that that's not where I was supposed to be. Like the enriched level, forget it. So that was a huge event in my life. I started to get acquainted with some very classical books, like Shakespeare and George Bernard Shaw's books, and Vonnegut, and things like detective novels like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, and just beautiful, beautiful books. This was all in my advanced placement class. I decided to stay. And my teacher, I still talk to her today. My sister actually has her right now as a teacher. And it was just fantastic because I think that my teacher was very nurturing, and she provided us with not just grammar and plot like they did in elementary school. She gave us more. We started learning things like symbolism and themes and metaphor and all of these, just this whole new level of literacy. And of course that reflected in my writing as well. I felt like it should be more highbrow. I should go raise the bar. That probably didn't work out for the best, reading my stuff from back then. Very interesting though, to see how that developed. And she definitely played a huge part, this teacher, in fostering my love for literacy. And this whole mistake that the high school made was probably one of the happiest, luckiest mistakes that have ever been made to me in my life. Another huge event that happened that's shaped me as a reader was the head of our department in high school. We were bonding. We pretty much started to bond over 1960s music, because in high school I was that hippie child that literally walked in with the big jeans and the Jimi Hendrix Band t-shirt with this unruly hair, talking about peace and love and the Beatles. The Doors were my favorite band, and me and the head of my department, his name was Mr. Bonk, we really, really bonded over that music. It was really great. And he just kind of inspired a whole new level of creativity with me, because he kind of taught a few of our classes showing us that what we loved can really be incorporated into what we read and how we see things in our books, and of course how we write as well. And in when I was in grade 11, he died of a heart attack, unfortunately, just right January 3rd. I'll never forget that, actually. That was a very horrible, horrible day. It was still Christmas holidays, but we got the news. And I was just devastated. I ended up writing a story about him, essentially about just our relationship. It was interesting, of, you know, this girl who just admired her teacher so much because he was so fun loving and free spirited, and then one day he dies and she keeps encountering his ghost at the school, which I know is kind of weird, but it has a point to it, I promise. She keeps encountering his ghost at the school, and he's obviously trying to tell her something, but she can't understand him. She can't. He's moving his lips, but there's no sound coming out. She's just at a loss. And then one day, she stays a little later than everyone after school, and she finds his ghost talking to her again. And he says, "Follow me." And he starts walking over to his classroom, which had been closed since he died. And the door's unlocked, and she walks in, and he points to the desk, and he can't open it, so she gets to open it for him, and she finds a book addressed to her. And I think that whole story, and and then at that point she starts to cry, and he disappears. But the whole point of that story was essentially just to say that this man really gave me the gift of creativity before he went away. And I'll never forget that. Because, I mean, that event didn't shape me so much as a reader as much as it did as a writer. Because I just knew that I could really give a heartfelt opinion in my writing. Maybe not an opinion, more of a feeling, I guess you could say. And university, I decided to go into English. I went into English literature and creative writing at first, and then one semester into it, I switched to English literature and philosophy, which was so good. I started reading people like Plato and Nietzsche and Aristotle and Sartre and Beauvoir. And I mean, I loved stuff like that. It really enriched me as a reader because it just showed me this was a whole literature devoted to purely ideas of existence and of politics and of a higher thought. All these philosophers were just kind of like me, just the way I've been throughout my whole life. They were such loners, and that's really sad. But you know, it's like when you're alone, when you have a lot of time to think. I think that's kind of when you start turning to philosophy, and anyone who's in philosophy can tell you that they've had a lot of time to think. So, James Joyce is one of my favorite authors. I got really into him in university just because of his raw emotion. Like, a lot of people say that they open a James Joyce book and say, I don't really get this. And I'm like, you get it if you stop looking for what it means. Just go along with the words, see how they make you feel. I mean, that's not all there is to Joyce, of course, but you can really get a lot just by reading him that way. And university taught me, again, another deeper level of reading and writing. It was just really fantastic. And I graduated from the University of Windsor. That was a huge event. And I think we should call this my personal literacy cycle, because when I was in my fourth year, I did not want to read, not even for pleasure. I was so turned off reading because they hounded us with readings. And then right when I graduated, I started reading for pleasure again, and I started reading things like comic books and children's literature, and it's just so funny because it's like I kind of reverted back to grade 1. But yeah, it's just, that's where I am now. When I read for pleasure, I like to read young adult books, like A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket, and I think as an adult you could still get so much out of it because he wrote 13 books, and when he started writing them, his audience was very young, but then we started to grow up, and so did his books. And you can find an amazing metaphor about what literacy can do for people, and why it's important in the world today. Um, I keep staring at my bookshelf while I'm doing this presentation. It's just so funny. But yeah, that's pretty much my personal literacy history. That's everything that's happened from grade one to my bachelor's of education. And I think it's a huge part of why I want to be a teacher, because literature has brought so many different emotions into my life. It's brought joy, it's brought sadness, but also a way of expressing it for the good. And I think that, especially as a primary school teacher, if you teach your children ways to build on what they have, and ways to love writing, ways to love the imagination, and even the plot, if you can do just that, you're setting them on their way for something so wonderful and so much more. So this was 15 minutes long. I apologize that you had to sit through that, but that's my personal literacy history, and I hope you somewhat enjoyed it.